Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us on this segment. And today we're going to go over something very important. You know, this past week, I was honored to be at the World Mayors Conference with the Honorable Johnny Ford, the Globetrotter Robert Hunter, and mayors from all over the world. And we were talking about moving forward, productivity, cultural preservation, and harmony, working together as human beings to create a better world, a better United States. And so today I'm very honored to have on our show an international humanitarian who has accomplished unbelievable achievements in the field of human rights. And Buddha, if we can put him up on the screen for our viewers, I want to introduce international humanitarian Mr. Raul Arias Perez, who has been a volunteer for human rights and Youth for Human Rights specifically since 2004. And there you see him doing what he does best with children, young people, teaching them how to have a better life. He became the executive director of Youth for Human Rights Mexico back in 2012, and subsequently in 2017 became director of the organization for entire Latin America. Mr. Arias has presented to more than thousands of youth and individuals in more than 20 countries around the world, promoting education on human rights, tolerance, peace. And there you see him at what are the events, coordinating and orchestrating what's going to happen. Under his leadership, Youth for Human Rights was part of the Government Policy Commission on Human Rights of the Mexican Ministry of the Interior during the historic constitutional reform on human rights in 2011. And there you see him leading a march, Averigualo, which in Spanish means find out. Raul has been part of the Human Rights Education Program of the Mexican Secretary of National Defense and the National Polytechnic Institute. He promoted alliances on human rights with the Mexican Supreme Court, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Public Education, Institute Mexicano de la Juventud, Sinpolice, MGM, Kidzania, Scouts of Mexico, and many, many others. Together with the government at Chiapas, he achieved a constitutional reform that included the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the state constitution and the mandatory nature of its teaching in its educational system. He's worked ceaselessly and tirelessly working on all our human rights, and in today's world, we're very honored to have him on the show. And Buddha, and if you can put him up on the screen live, I want to welcome Mr. Raul Arias to A Time for Truth show.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me, Ben, to this great show that you have. Very happy to be here.
We're very honored to have you, and you know there's so much going on in today's world. So first I want to go step by step because I'm sure that the viewers, as they were watching all you've accomplished, want to gain from you and have you as a role model. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is what inspired you to take on this purpose of human rights?
In September 11, 2001, I, like everybody else, witnessed what happened that day, and I was worried about human rights in the world. And it was on that same year that Youth for Human Rights was founded. And so in October of that year is that I found Youth for Human Rights, and it made complete sense to me that if we want human rights in the world, we should first teach human rights, because 90% of the world are unaware of them. And then in 2004, I was in the United States. My brother used to live there, and I get to meet people, Mexican people who work in restaurants, that told me all their stories about how they cross the border and how people smuggle them. And they told me horrible stories. Like one guy told me that they were in a trailer and this guy took them and abandoned them in the desert, no? And then the immigration police actually rescued them, but they were in the desert. So by the time the immigration police arrived there, the border patrol, and opened the trailer, there were many people there, like there was almost no space, and the person lying next to the guy telling me the story died of asphyxiation. And it was terrifying to hear all these stories and why they left their hometowns in the first place. And just when I was learning these stories, at the same time I saw an event with the release of the human rights videos, the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in a video spot of 1 minute, illustrating them. So then that's when I really decided to become a volunteer. I wanted to help my country. In that time, my vision was to help my people so they don't have to leave their country. They could live in their country, where their home is, where their family is, their culture.
Right.
But then I started to see that's not the only human right issue we have in the world. So in 2009, I got an invitation to attend a conference about human trafficking. And I arrived there. There were about 7,000 people in there. It was in the National Auditorium. And most of them were parents carrying photos of missing children. And that opened my eyes to see that there is a situation in the world with human rights. Not in Mexico only, not in Latin America only, not in the United States only. There's not one nation in the world who could raise their hand and say, in this country, the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are a reality. There's not one nation in the world. So I decided to help as much as I can. Being one person, you can probably not change the whole world, but you can change another person, and then that person can change another person, and then you can create a movement. And that's why I started.
Well, I'm so happy that you have, because I've seen, as I was reading your biography, and I know that was like a very curtailed and short biography, and by no means complete, but how much you've accomplished. So I'm sure the viewers are also very curious, because I know they're very concerned about what's going on in the world. So how does the Human Rights Program work, and what is the link also that they can get this program at?
Sure. First of all, the link is youthforhumanrights.org. Youthforhumanrights.org. And the program works very simple. We want to teach human rights specifically to youth, or in particular to youth. We want to teach to everybody. The official definition of youth of the United Nations is from 18 years old to 29 years old. So we changed that definition, and we put it from 3-year-old to 99 years old, to youth of different ages. After 99, We don't recommend it because it's too exciting, too much strong emotion, so it could be dangerous, no, for the health. But until 99, I think everybody should learn their human rights. And the program simply teaches the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. For thousands of years, the human family has been fighting for certain basic liberties that we can summarize with respect and dignity. I guess those would be the words to summarize the fight of human rights. And that fight started even before the words human rights even existed. And we can say this fight continues today, no? But in 1948, inspired in the atrocities committed in World War II, the United Nations came out with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, December 10, 1948. It was a document created, first of all, led by a woman, Eleanor Roosevelt, that many people know her as the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but we should know her as Eleanor Roosevelt, the woman that all her life fought for the rights of minorities and underprivileged communities. And she was the main architect. But there were, I think, 18 more people from different nations who, in the Commission of Human Rights of the United Nations, came up with this document. And if you read it, it's one of the most beautiful documents in the world. And every nation that belongs to the United Nations has adopted it. So it's the most widely accepted document of human rights in the world. However, almost no one knows about it. And if you do a survey, which we did, 90% of the people won't be able to tell you more than 3 of the 30 human rights included in it. So our program teaches human rights not because education is the solution to everything or that's all you have to do. No, but I think it's the first step. The first step, if we want human rights to be a reality instead of an idealistic dream, we should start by knowing what are human rights, because we don't even know. How do we know if we're getting closer or further away if we don't know what they are? So that's the first step. It's very simple. And that way we appeal to the humanity in each of us. I think, there's 8 billion people on this planet. I guess, just by observation, that most of the people living on this planet must be good people. Because if the majority were criminals, we wouldn't have a civilization anymore. I guess most of the people want they want good things for themselves and for others. And when we teach human rights, we are giving them the tools to do something about the current situation. And so I love the campaign. It's like investing. It's like planting seeds on young minds that will have the potential to change the world in the future.
Absolutely. We had a show recently that was with a humanitarian here in New York that does some drug education. His name is Arnold Pinnock. And he basically had written a play about Martin Luther King. And he said how during his lifetime, how he really impacted the world. So your words are really very sound and well taken, because we can change the world. He was on the earth for 39 years, and look at all that got changed while he was here and has happened since in tribute to him. So, it'll be interesting, to see what happens because of what you've done, because of human rights. And, I wanted to ask you, because I think that you're also in the United Nations annually, right?
Yeah. I consider myself just a volunteer. Thank you for the acknowledgement. This is a movement from young people of all ages, from 150 nations or more, no? And Youth for Human Rights International holds a yearly summit in the United Nations headquarters in New York, which is New York is one of the capitals of the world. And so we go there, young people from all over the world come and speak in the UN representing their countries to tell what are they doing in their communities to promote human rights education. And that's my favorite weekend of the year. I look forward to it because that's my pay. I am a volunteer. But when I listen to these kids speaking, the language they use, the force they have, there is no scarcity. I've given human rights seminars, I think, in 27 countries. And I can tell you, to thousands of youth. The other day we were trying to calculate how many kids I've given seminars to, and I think it was at least over 100,000 in 18 years, or 150,000, something like that. I can tell you, there is no scarcity of people, young people who want to change the world. Sometimes they criticize these young generations a lot. I don't think that's fair. I think, yes, it's not a perfect generation because there is not a perfect world, but there is no scarcity of willingness to do something to create a better world. And when you give them a simple tool like human rights education, they are very grateful and they are very proactive. They take it and they do, and I find out, because we always do a feedback survey at the end, and this is the pay we get as volunteers. I think the first step is to dream with a better world, but the second step is to do something. You have to have a dream and then do something to get it, and to confront the correct estimation of effort to get that dream. If we want to change the world, which is 8 billion people, it's going to take some action that is usually outside our comfort zone. But when you do it, the return of investment is to see that there is hope. We don't have to live in a world where we are afraid of a nuclear war, where we are afraid of our children being kidnapped, where there's people dying of starvation. This is not normal. And I think we should all realize that this is not normal. We as a society probably have learned to tolerate it. We have come to a point where we think it's okay in the news to have it every day, but it's not normal. We shouldn't agree with it. We have the right to disagree. I would add that as a human right. We have the right to disagree. And when you disagree and raise your voice, maybe you're going to feel crazy or alone at first, but eventually you will find you're not the only one. There's other crazy people like you, and there's many others. And if we coordinate together the social personalities on this planet, definitely we can make a big change. We don't have to tolerate the insanity we're seeing.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Hopefully I meet many, many more insane people like you, because I like that kind of, I like that kind of insanity. And engineer, I was going to ask the engineer to get the video ready. Let me know when you have it queued up. I want to play one of the videos of the Youth for Human Rights program, which is amazing. So let me know when it's all set. And, I find it a breath of fresh air. And let's go ahead and play it.
I'm Chinese.
I am Russian.
I am East African.
I'm Canadian.
I am Filipina.
I am Irish.
I am Bulgarian. Korean.
I am American.
I am Brazilian.
Italian.
Mexican. I'm British.
Swedish.
French.
I'm Israeli.
Mongolian. I'm South African.
Japanese.
We are mankind.
Un minuto. So, that's quite a program. I want to ask you, what would you want to see occur? Because in the world today, there's so much racial prejudice going on, trafficking, kids disappearing, you name it, it's happening. Crime, violence. We don't have much time left in the show, but what would you like to see happen? And what do you want our viewers to leave this show with? What message?
I think, that's a good example that you're giving of prejudice, for example. Prejudice, I believe, we can compare it to a virus, now that, we all are very familiar with that. A virus is so little that nobody can see, not even in a microscope, no? And a prejudice is the same. And you can get infected without realizing you got infected. And you can go for a while without presenting any symptoms. But then that virus can start to develop a disease, and it can cause a lot of pain, and it can cause death. And prejudice for me is the same. We can get infected by watching a movie or by listening when we're kids to our family speak, or some habits they have, or even jokes that we hear. And you know, and if you plant that in a young mind, maybe they don't realize it, but then it can grow to create a disease of hate, of discrimination, that can cause pain and death. That's why I compared with the virus. Like, how many movies have we seen where the terrorist is Muslim? How many movies have we seen where the priest is a pedophile, where the Mexican is a drug dealer, or the Colombian is a drug dealer, and the Mexican is lazy, and you know, and the woman is silly, and you know, so many examples,
Right.
that we make it part of our culture. You know, I have an example of my own. A long time ago, I had a concept. You know, there's a urban tribe called emos. EMO comes from emotional, and it's a group of kids, like a cultural movement, that they dress in black, no, and they have the hair sometimes covering their eyes, and they listen to some sort of music that is tending to be depressive, and you know, it's a whole movement, no, a whole culture. And for me, without knowing any of them, I had already made the judgment that all of them were angry with the world. They were not giving any valuable to the world. They were mad at life, etc. So that was my concept. And one day I was walking in the street, you know, a long time ago, when there were still record stores, and I found like 1,000 emos in line, waiting because Marilyn Manson was gonna go there to sign autographs, no? And I was walking, and I had some time off, so I decided to stop, because sometimes they dress in a very peculiar way, you know, with horns and you know, coats and makeup. And I stopped there, and we were talking. What are you doing? And what do you do for life? Da da da. And one of them said he was a poet. And when he said that, outside I tried to look respectful, but inside I was laughing. Really, you know, I was thinking what kind of poems this guy should write. And I was thinking he must write like, I hate my parents, I want to kill myself, I hate life, something like that. And I said, why don't you give me one of your poems? And his friend had a little keyboard from his bag and started to play like a gothic song. And this guy said a poem about love, and a cat, and the roof, and the full moon, and it was great. It was great, and it shut my mouth, and I realized you don't know someone until you know him. No, I cannot tell you the 1,000 people there were poets, all of them. No, maybe some of them were students, maybe some of them were drug addicts, maybe some of them were thieves. The fact is that I don't know, because I don't know them. And I learned a very important lesson there, that you don't know someone until you know them, no? And if we take care, if we are careful what we teach our children, I think we can build a strong society that doesn't tolerate, that doesn't agree with prejudice, with discrimination, with hate, with torture, with hunger, with all these things are unnecessary. I think men, the human race, has enough intelligence and talent and science to solve the problems of mankind. But we need to work together. And I think the glue that can make us work together as a team is human rights education. That's why I dedicate my life to it.
It makes total sense to me. And you know, when you look at it, when you really think of how much each one of us does for the other. And you know, I wanted something very simple. The other day, I was talking to somebody about fruit and fruit trees, because I was interested in planting one. And he told me, well, this will get fruit from November to December. So I said to him, but what happens the rest of the year? And he goes, well, it doesn't get fruit. I said, but I don't understand. When I go to the grocery store, they always have oranges all year round, or for at least 6 months. And maybe the navel oranges don't exist for 6 months, and they're Valencia. But how do they have oranges? And he goes to me, oh, that's because it's coming from other parts of the world. I said, well, How many people know that? Because that means that I will only have oranges for about 1 month of the year, 2 months if I preserved it. How is that? That's unbelievable. How many of us even realize that our food is coming from all parts of the world? I don't know who says anything about it. So I think your point is so well taken. We're at the end of the show. What concluding statement or remark would you like to leave with our audience, Mr. Arias?
Thank you. I think there's many problems in the world, many problems. We can get overwhelmed if we look at the news. And first, before getting worried about the problems, let's focus on something that can bring a good change to begin with. And I think human rights education is a first step for that. You know, what I like about this campaign, we don't tell the people what to think. We don't tell you in controversial topics what to think. You know, you should be red or you should be blue or you should be on this side or this side. No, we tell you whichever side you're on whatever topic, you have 30 rights. Know them so that you can defend them for yourself, of course, but also realize that unless our fellow men has the same 30 rights as a reality, they will never be a reality for us. We are interconnected, and we don't have to agree on anything. You know, that wouldn't be actually desirable, no? That would be an utopia. We don't want that. No, people will have disagreements, but at least we don't kill each other. That's something we can attain. We can create a civilization. We don't kill each other just because we are different, we look different, or we think different. And we can have a much better place here for our children, but we need to build it together. And something we can do is promote human rights education.
Well, with that statement, I wholeheartedly agree. We can agree not to kill each other if we disagree, and then afterwards we can all get together and have a good time. Because, you know, it seems like the more you like someone, the more you fight with them, but afterwards it's wonderful because you feel really good about it and you get together. So for all of you watching the show, let's apply human rights. Thank you, Mr. Arias, for coming on the show. And let's make a better world. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Fialkov. Good night.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet